Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack the ideas that reshape our world. Today, we're not just discussing a book. We're inviting you on a pretty mind-bending journey. It's one that'll likely force you to reconsider what it truly means to be human, to be conscious, and to live in a world shaped by the technologies we're creating.
That's right.
We're diving into a real landmark work, a classic of future gazing, Ray Kurzweil's The Age of Spiritual Machines. This is the English BookCast, and I have to say, even after spending a lot of time with this material, I'm still grappling with some of Kurzweil's predictions. They're pretty bold.
Oh, absolutely. It's an extraordinary piece of work because, well, much of what Kurzweil meticulously detailed in this book, written decades ago, it's already part of our present, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
And other aspects are, rapidly converging.
Yeah.
For you, our listener, the core of this deep dive is really to unpack how human existence and our very definition of intelligence are on this kind of, well, inexorable collision course with the technological creations we're bringing into being.
Right. It's a future that's not just like approaching out there.
No, it's being built right now around us.
So our mission today, we want to pull out the absolute must-know insights from the age of spiritual machines, give you a real shortcut to understanding the future of AI, the nature of consciousness, and what it might actually mean to be human in the coming decades. Okay, let's unpack this.
The inexorable acceleration of everything.
Right from the prologue, Kurzweil drops an absolute bombshell. It just fundamentally reorients everything we think we know. He basically says that before the end of this century, the 21st, humans might not be the single most intelligent or capable entities on this planet. And then almost immediately, he kind of clarifies, saying he needs to retire what he just said, because the truth of that statement, it depends entirely on how we define human.
Exactly. It's a provocative start, isn't it?
It really is.
And what's fascinating there is the immediate philosophical challenge he throws down right out of the gate. It forces us, and you listening, to confront these really fundamental questions. Can intelligence create intelligence superior to itself?
Right.
And if it can, are we, as a product of evolution, actually more intelligent than our own creator? Kurzweil sets up this profound paradox immediately, making us question our very position, at the top of the intelligence ladder right at the start of the book.
And this isn't just like a wild guess or some sci-fi fantasy. I remember seeing reviews back when it came out, like from the San Francisco Chronicle, noting this wasn't just idle speculation.
No, definitely not.
His claim is rooted in this core principle, something he calls the law of accelerating returns.
Exactly. And the real insight here for you isn't just that technology is moving fast. We all kind of feel that. It's that the rate of its acceleration is itself accelerating.
So it's speeding up, speeding up.
Pretty much. It's not a straight line. It's more like a runaway train on an exponential curve. Kurzweil argues, and he brings a lot of data, that all the empirical evidence confirms this. It's an observable pattern across both biological and technological evolution.
Okay, so what does that mean for us, practically?
Well, it means any long-term plan you might have for your career, your investments, even how society is structured, if it's based only on today's pace of change, it's probably flawed.
Because the future will get here faster than we think.
Exponentially faster, yeah. You have to anticipate a future that's not just different, but radically different, and sooner than feels intuitive. Like John Castee wrote in Nature, Kurzweil paints this impressive and sometimes frightening portrait of a world where the line dividing humans and machines is no longer clear. And remember, this is coming from an entrepreneur, an inventor, not a novelist. That adds a layer of practical urgency.
He uses this great anecdote from the Twilight Zone to illustrate a kind of human paradox. It's about a gambler who wins constantly, finds it utterly boring, and begs to leave heaven only to be told, well, he's already in the other place.
Yeah, it's a chilling story, isn't it? And it raises this important question for all of us. We humans, we enjoy solving problems. It seems baked into our nature.
Yeah, we like the challenge.
But do we actually want all problems solved? Especially not too quickly. We are, in a funny way, often more attached to the problems themselves than to their ultimate solutions.
That's interesting. Like, we need the struggle.
Maybe. Think about something as fundamental as death. We fight it so hard, see it as tragic, but it also gives immense meaning to our lives, value to time itself. Without that limitation, the human psyche could genuinely end up like that unhappy gambler bored, restless, longing for the very challenges that define our existence. It's a really profound thought.
It makes sense, especially when you look at the sheer scale of change Kurzweil describes. He points out how the 20th century saw these massive revolutions, technological and social, that almost no one in, say, 1899 could have possibly predicted.
And he attributes this acceleration directly to technology, which he sees as a continuation of evolution, just by other means. He makes a really stark prediction. The first 2 decades of the 21st century will see transformations far greater than the entire 20th century.
Wow. The whole century's worth of change packed into just 20 years.
That's the idea. He talks about the knee of the curve and exponential growth. Things seem to unfold slowly for a long time, and then suddenly they just burst forth with this furious, unprecedented speed.
And we're in that knee right now.
He argues we are, yes. We're experiencing that point where seemingly slow progress suddenly explodes into rapid, pervasive change all around us.
It's fascinating how he argues this acceleration isn't just a tech thing. It's baked right into evolution itself, like nature keeps a written record. What does he mean by that?
It's a brilliant metaphor, actually. Evolution works because it preserves successful information, right? It builds on what worked before.
Okay.
So from early organisms encoding records in their body chemistry to the incredibly complex digital data in DNA, then our invention of written language, and now computer databases, each step drastically speeds up how we accumulate and pass on knowledge.
So evolution doesn't have to keep reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. It avoids repeatedly solving the same problems. And Kurzweil suggests that eventually technology itself will reach a point where it can create new technology without us needing to intervene directly. It just continues this evolutionary path on its own, a kind of self-sustaining acceleration.
It's amazing to think that our species, Homo sapiens sapiens, had fire and language 40,000 years ago, but it took tens of thousands of years just to figure out sharpening both sides of a stone tool. Puts the early pace in perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. And that initial slowness, paradoxically, is what makes the later acceleration so dramatic. The key wasn't just making a tool. It was that these innovations occurred and persisted. They stuck around and were built upon, something you don't see as consistently in other tool-using animals.
So technology, like life itself, speeds up over time.
Inherently, yes. The foundations of stone tools took millennia. Then compare that to 19th century progress: canals, railways, the telegraph, photography, electric light. It far exceeded all previous centuries combined.
Right.
Then the early 20th century matched the entire 19th. And today, major transformations happen in just a few years. Think about the World Wide Web. It barely existed a few years before Kurzweil wrote the book, and then boom, it was everywhere. It clearly shows that accelerating nature.
Kurzweil also gives us this useful framework, the 5-stage life cycle of technology. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. It starts with precursors. The initial ideas or components exist, but they haven't quite come together. Think maybe Da Vinci's flying machines.
Okay, the groundwork.
Then invention, the actual breakthrough moment. Watt's improved steam engine, for example. After that comes maturity, where the tech becomes established, widely used, and seems like it'll last forever, like steam power dominating factories and trains.
Right, when it's just the way things are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then comes the interesting drama, as Kurzweil calls it, the challengers stage. A new tech emerges, threatens the old one. It might initially fail to completely replace it, but it shows huge potential. Think the internal combustion engine starting to challenge steam.
Okay, the disruption phase.
And finally, the old tech enters obsolescence. It gradually declines over maybe 5–10% of its total life cycle, replaced by something newer, often more flexible. The phonograph is a perfect example. Edison's invention in 1877, mature LPs in 1948, then eventually becoming obsolete in the digital age. We see this cycle everywhere.
And driving so much of this, especially recently, is computing power. Moore's law.
Yes, Moore's law, the number of transistors on a chip doubling roughly every 2 years, essentially quadrupling computational value for the same cost. But Kurzweil's deep dive shows this exponential growth didn't start with integrated circuits, with silicon chips.
It was happening before that.
Much before. His exponential growth of computing, 1900–1998 chart, plots 49 different machines. It shows the trend holding steady across mechanical calculators, electromechanical relays, vacuum tubes, discrete transistors, and then integrated circuits.
Wow, so it's a much deeper, longer-term trend.
Exactly. It's a foundational pattern for technological advancement, far broader than just Gordon Moore's specific observation about transistors.
It's easy to get lost in the computer details, but Kurzweil pulls back to look at the big picture, identifying these really profound exponential trends in the universe itself.
He does. He points out the universe's own pace seems to be exponentially slowing down, like 3 major paradigm shifts happened in the first billionth of a second, but then it took billions of years for stars and galaxies to form.
Okay, so the universe slows down.
But then, paradoxically, an individual organism's development also exponentially slows down rapid growth as a fetus and child, then slower milestones as an adult.
Okay.
But contrast that with the exponentially accelerating pace of life's evolution on Earth and the exponentially accelerating pace of human-created technology, especially computing.
So we have slowing and speeding up happening at different scales. How does that fit with, like, entropy, the idea that things tend towards disorder?
That's a great question. The law of increasing entropy says chaos increases, time slows down in a closed system like the universe. But Kurzweil points out evolution is not a closed system. It actually uses disorder from the environment to create greater order.
How does that work?
Think about the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. That was massive chaos.
Yeah.
But it cleared the way, accelerated the rise of mammals, and ultimately us and our technology. So chaos isn't always the enemy of progress. Sometimes it's the catalyst.
Kurzweil also talks about the S-curve of learning, where you improve rapidly, then plateau as you hit limits. We all feel that, don't we?
We do. But what makes humans unique, he argues, is our ability to consistently jump off one S-curve and onto a new one by creating new niches through technology and innovation. We don't just hit the limit, we change the game.
And he thinks machines will join us in doing that.
He predicts they will, yes. In this century, they'll start overcoming their own limits, continually pushing boundaries, finding new ways to learn and grow, just like us. That's why progress doesn't just stop.
This brings us back to that classic story, the inventor of chess and the emperor, the grains of rice doubling on each square.
Exactly. And Kurzweil's crucial point is that we are now entering the second half of that chessboard.
Where the numbers get truly crazy huge.
Precisely. This is where the exponential growth explodes and becomes almost impossible to grasp intuitively. The implications shift from just interesting to world-altering, because the doubling happens so fast and the scale becomes immense very quickly.
Okay, let's clarify another really mind-bending concept he brings up. The difference between our subjective experience of time and objective time. This connects back to those exponential curves, right?
It does, and he has a really elegant idea here. Objectively, if you watch an organism develop, things happen fast at first, then the milestones get further apart as it ages. So objectively, time seems to slow down for the organism's development.
Right, like learning to walk versus getting a PhD takes way longer.
Exactly. But subjectively, we feel like time speeds up as we get older, don't we?
Definitely feels that way.
Kurzweil explained this because each subjective unit of time, like a year, feels shorter relative to the total time we've already lived, and the milestones are farther apart. So a year feels like a smaller fraction of our life, and thus faster as we age.
So if we feel time accelerating while our objective development slows, then evolution, if it were conscious.
It would feel time slowing down while objectively it's accelerating.
Whoa, that's a fascinating reversal. A cosmic irony, almost. It really highlights how subjective our perception is. Makes me wonder if time felt slower for evolution. Was it maybe experiencing some kind of ancient cosmic patience we can't even imagine?
That's a wonderful way to think about it. It really speaks to the complex relationship between consciousness, perception, and the objective reality of these underlying processes. Time isn't just a fixed clock tick, it's fundamentally experienced.
So, given all this relentless, accelerating progress, is there anything that can actually stop it? Or are we just locked in?
Kurzweil's view is pretty stark, really. He thinks only a truly civilization-ending catastrophe could halt it. Think total nuclear war, or maybe a runaway nanobot plague, or a massive asteroid hit.
Not just like running out of resources or hitting some natural limit.
He sees those more as challenges to be overcome by the next wave of technology, not fundamental breaks on the law of accelerating returns itself. He frames the big catastrophes as modes of failure, risks we have to consciously manage and navigate. He argues the drive for progress, the benefits, they're just too fundamental to our nature, too irresistible. We won't stop unless we're forced to by utter disaster.
The intelligence of evolution.
Okay, let's zoom in now on that really critical question, the one that ties back to Kurzweil's opening bombshell. Yeah. Can intelligence create another intelligence that's actually more intelligent than itself? It feels almost wrong to ask, but it's central to his whole argument.
It is central. And Kurzweil starts by looking at evolution itself, the process that created us. He calls it the master programmer.
The master programmer.
Yeah, think about it. Evolution has designed millions of incredibly diverse and genius species on Earth. Our DNA, he says, is essentially digital data, the complex software of life, billions of bits of information.
Right.
He highlights the amazing nanoengineering in life's machinery, tiny molecular parts encoding information, performing error correction. It's all happening at the atomic level, building proteins, amino acid chains. It's stuff we're only just starting to really understand with things like the Human Genome Project.
It sounds like incredibly sophisticated programming.
It is. But he also points out that while evolution is a prolific programmer, it's also been kind of sloppy. It left us with billions of bits of object code, the final running program, our DNA, but without the high-level source code, no comments, no user manual. We're running this incredibly complex software, but we don't fully have the blueprint.
That's a great analogy. So if evolution is this master programmer, albeit a sloppy one, what's its big drawback?
Well, while evolution undeniably created designs of, as he puts it, indescribable beauty, complexity, and elegance, it has one huge, undeniable deficiency. It's unbelievably slow.
Billions of years slow, right?
Exactly, billions of years to get where it is, and that's the crucial point for his argument.
Because in contrast, human ancestors took, tens of thousands of years to start creating technology. That's already a massive speed up.
A vast acceleration. And Kurzweil argues human technology will likely surpass evolution's cumulative achievements in maybe just thousands of years compared to evolution's billions.
Okay, but doesn't that sound a bit like we're saying we're better than our creator?
Yeah.
That feels bold.
It does sound bold, but Kurzweil's point isn't necessarily better in quality, but vastly superior in speed and efficiency of innovation. Human intelligence, which is a product of evolution, can iterate and build much, much faster because we stand on its shoulders. We have tools like language, abstract thought, and now computers that evolution itself didn't possess.
So we leverage its foundation to go faster.
Precisely. He uses this idea of the law of time and chaos to clarify. Think of it this way. Evolution, over billions of years, takes chaos, simple molecules, simple cells, and builds order, complex organisms, ecosystems. It moves towards increasing order.
Okay, chaos to order.
But for an individual organism like you or me, it's kind of the opposite. You start as a single, highly ordered cell, a fertilized egg. Then you grow by pulling in disorder or chaos from your environment, food, air, energy, to become a much larger, more complex, and actually, thermodynamically speaking, more disordered adult system.
Huh. I never thought of it that way. We create ourselves out of environmental chaos?
In a sense, yes. We build our complex structure by processing less ordered inputs. This fundamental difference in the direction of order and chaos, he argues, is linked to why our subjective experience of time, feeling like it speeds up, is different from evolution's objective acceleration, which would feel like it's slowing down if it felt anything.
Wow, okay. Evolution creates order from chaos, slowly, objectively accelerating, while we create our ordered selves by consuming chaos, quickly, subjectively accelerating. That clears up a lot.
It's a subtle but really powerful distinction, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the profound implication of all this. It means it's not really a question of if intelligent technology will eventually take over the process of creating even more intelligent technology. It's just a matter of when. The groundwork is being laid for a whole new era of evolution directed by our creations.
Minded machines.
Okay, this brings us to a really crucial point. One that feels very relevant today with all the AI chatbots and things. Imagine your computer flashes a message. I'm lonely and bored. Please stay with me. Would you believe it? Would you think it actually had consciousness, feelings? Kurzweil says, don't answer too quickly.
It's a powerful thought experiment, isn't it? Because it forces you to confront your assumptions. Kurzweil reminds us that even when he wrote the book, a $1,000 computer chip already matched the raw processing power, the calculations per second of a human brain.
Already back then. Wow.
Yeah. And now, many computers are invisible, embedded in everything, from our cars to our thermostats. And his predictions for 2009, which we'll get to, already included things like virtual reality displays and glasses, talking naturally with computers, even forming relationships with automated personalities, companions, teachers, maybe even lovers.
So that I'm lonely message doesn't seem quite so abstract anymore.
Exactly. It's moving from sci-fi speculation towards something we might actually encounter.
He takes this idea even further with this thought experiment about Jack. Jack starts upgrading himself, cochlear implants, then better circuits for hearing, eventually scanning his entire brain and nervous system and replacing it all with electronic circuits. Faster, better circuit.
Right. A complete biological to digital transition.
And the core question is he still Jack? What makes him Jack? And what if the original biological Jack still exists after the scan? Is making that perfect digital copy? Is it like murder of the original?
Okay.
Or suicide?
It throws you right into the deep end of philosophy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Personal identity, the nature of self, what defines you as a unique individual. If this becomes possible, what are the ethics? How do you handle legal rights, inheritance? If you delete the digital copy, is that murder? Kurzweil isn't giving easy answers. He's forcing us to confront the implications that are rushing towards us.
He quotes thinkers like Max Planck, Edgar Allan Poe, even Woody Allen people who've pondered the mystery of nature, reality, illusion, existence. Planck said something like, "Science cannot solve the ultimate mystery, because we are part of the mystery we are trying to solve." That really fits here.
It does. And it brings us right to that crucial distinction between objective reality, what science can measure, and subjective experience, what philosophers like David Chalmers call the hard problem of consciousness.
The hard problem.
Can you truly explain the feeling of swimming or the taste of chocolate or the joy of music to someone who's never experienced it? They can learn about the physics, the chemistry, the neurology, but they can't know what it's like.
That inner feeling, the redness of red.
Exactly. Marvin Minsky pointed out how hard it is to even describe consciousness clearly.
Yeah.
And that subjective inner world is precisely what science, dealing with the objective, struggles to grasp. It's critical when we start asking if a machine could really be conscious.
And this isn't a new problem. It goes way back, even to Plato, right?
Absolutely. Plato wrestled with free will and consciousness. He saw humans as part of the natural world, governed by its laws, but he also believed in this immutable soul, separate from the mechanics of thought.
But that created a problem.
A paradox, yeah. If the soul is immutable, unchanging, how can it learn or reason? Because learning and reasoning require change, interaction with experience. Plato couldn't quite reconcile it. He couldn't comfortably place consciousness entirely in the machine-like processes of the brain, nor entirely in some unchanging mystical soul. It's a fundamental tension we still feel today.
And Kurzweil points out that modern thinking still has similar camps grappling with that same paradox.
Right. One camp basically says consciousness is just a machine reflecting on itself. It's an illusion, maybe, or just a logical process where a system models itself. But Kurzweil argues this completely fails to explain the subjective what it's like part. It explains the function, perhaps, but not the feeling.
It doesn't explain the redness.
Exactly. The other camp says consciousness is a different kind of matter, or a fundamental property of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. But this often leads towards mysticism that can't be tested, or it suggests consciousness interferes with physics in ways we've never observed. Neither camp really nails the hard problem.
So maybe quantum mechanics offers a different angle, a way to bridge these views.
Kurzweil suggests it might. Quantum mechanics famously reconciled seemingly opposite views, like light being both a particle and a wave, into a kind of irreducible duality. He argues maybe consciousness is like that too.
Not either, but both and.
Perhaps. And concepts from quantum mechanics like electron tunneling, where particles can appear on the other side of a barrier they shouldn't be able to cross, were essential for creating transistors, the foundation of the computing age. So embracing apparent paradoxes can lead to breakthroughs. Maybe a similar approach is needed for understanding the mind-body problem.
Marvin Minsky's Society of Mind theory offers another way to think about intelligence. How does that fit in?
It's a fascinating model. Minsky proposed that our mind isn't one single thing, but more like a society, a hierarchy, of many simpler minds or agents working together, sometimes cooperating, sometimes competing.
Like different parts of you wanting different things.
Exactly. It helps explain things like mixed emotions or why you might decide not to eat that cookie but then find yourself eating it anyway. Different agents won the internal debate. And in this model, consciousness might not be an all-or-nothing thing. It could exist at various levels within this hierarchy.
So consciousness could be a gradient, not just on or off.
That's one implication, yeah. Which makes the question of machine consciousness even more complex.
So if we build machines complex enough, using Minsky's ideas, can we ever prove they're conscious? If a machine says, hey, I'm conscious, is that proof? Or do we need to, scan its internal processes? Philosophers like Daniel Dennett think it's ultimately testable, but Kurzweil seems skeptical.
Kurzweil leans towards skepticism about proving it scientifically, because science deals with objective observation, and consciousness is subjective experience. You can't objectively measure the feeling inside the machine.
So we can see the brain activity or the code running, but not the feeling itself.
Right. We can correlate brain activity with reported feelings in humans, but we can't directly access the feeling. So the question becomes, at what point, if a machine behaves exactly like a conscious being, claims to be conscious, discusses its feelings convincingly. At what point do we just have to take its word for it? It's a huge philosophical and eventually social challenge. We're already bumping up against it with sophisticated AI chatbots.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Imagine you could upload your consciousness to a computer. What happens to your perception of time? This is where things get really weird.
Yeah, this is mind-bending. If your consciousness is running on hardware that's, say, 1,000,000 times faster than your biological brain, then one objective hour passing in the outside world could feel like a century to you, subjectively.
A century in 1 hour.
That's the implication. It highlights the incredible difference in lived experience that digital existence could offer. Imagine learning, thinking, experiencing at speeds we can barely comprehend. But it also raises weird issues, like being forgotten for subjective millennia if your backup isn't managed.
Wow. Okay. I'd finally get through my backlog of books in about 5 minutes of real time. So the implications are just staggering. What does Kurzweil see as the ultimate limit? Can anything stop this march towards, well, whatever this future is?
He really doubles down on his earlier point. Only a catastrophe that wipes out the whole process, think global thermonuclear war, or maybe the Grey Goo nanotech disaster we'll talk about later, could truly stop it. He sees these not as limits to the acceleration, but as potential catastrophic failures of the process. Modes of failure we have to avoid. The momentum, he believes, fueled by the benefits in our own nature, is just too strong otherwise.
A new form of intelligence on Earth.
Moving away from the purely philosophical, let's talk about AI in the real world. The artificial intelligence movement isn't just theory anymore, is it? It's woven into our lives, often invisibly, and certainly much more so now than when Kurzweil wrote the book.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere. Think about medicine. ECG machines often come with the computer's initial diagnosis. Intelligent image processing helps doctors spot subtle things in scans of bodies and brains. Bioengineering uses computer simulations to design new drugs way faster than traditional methods.
And for people with disabilities.
AI has been a massive boon there, even going back to the 70s. Reading machines for the blind or dyslexic, speech recognition systems for people who can't use keyboards. These aren't futuristic predictions. They're established technologies that have profoundly improved lives, making AI's impact very tangible and positive for many.
Even warfare has been completely transformed, as you mentioned. Kurzweil points to the 1991 Gulf War as a real turning point.
He does. He argues that traditional military might, based on geography, number of soldiers, sheer firepower, was largely overshadowed by machine intelligence.
How so?
Think smart drones. Missiles that could find their own targets using machine vision, secure intelligent communication networks, sophisticated encryption. It was all about the software and electronics enabling precision and coordination on a whole new level. It showed that the side with the smarter machines often had a decisive advantage, minimizing their own human risk while maximizing impact. The nature of conflict shifted towards information dominance.
Kurzweil then digs into some of the specific AI approaches, the paradigms driving this intelligence. He starts with the recursive formula. What's that about?
This is great for problems that involve exploring a huge number of possibilities, where the choices branch out rapidly, what's called a combinatorial explosion. Think playing chess or proving complex mathematical theorems.
Like Deep Blue beating Kasparov.
Exactly. Deep Blue used a very sophisticated version of this recursive approach. It didn't understand chess like a human, but it could explore billions of possible board positions, many moves ahead, using its incredible speed to calculate the consequences of each potential move recursively. It overwhelms the problem with brute force calculation guided by smart rules. Even earlier, the 1957 General Problem Solver program managed to outdo famous logicians on some math proofs using similar logic.
Okay, so that's one approach. Then he talks about neural networks, which we hear about all the time now.
Right. Neural nets are inspired by the structure of human neurons, lots of simple processing units connected together. They learn by adjusting the strength of those connections based on data they're fed.
So they learn from examples.
Exactly. They're used in all sorts of things. Medical diagnoses, like systems that identify heart attack risks from ECGs, or classify cancer cells from images, and also in finance, like systems predicting stock market movements. Kurzweil notes that while biological neurons are way more complex chemically, a lot of that complexity is just for keeping the cell alive. The actual information processing part can be simulated very effectively and millions of times faster by electronic circuits.
Okay, and the third main type he discusses is Evolutionary algorithms or
Yeah.
genetic algorithms. It sounds like machines designing themselves.
Kind of. It's a really cool approach. Instead of a human programmer trying to figure out the perfect solution and code it directly, you set up a system where potential solutions compete against each other in a simulation.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
For code.
Pretty much. The fittest solutions, the ones that perform best on the task, are selected, combined, mated, and slightly mutated over thousands of simulated generations. This all happens very quickly on a computer, maybe hours or days. The optimal solution gradually emerges from this evolutionary process, often finding answers a human designer would never have thought of.
And businesses actually use this.
Oh, yeah. Kurzweil mentions big financial firms like Barclays Global Investors, Fidelity, Panagora Asset Management using these techniques to manage investment funds. It shows these aren't just academic toys, they're powerful tools for solving complex, real-world problems where optimal solutions are hard to find manually.
But all this rapid tech progress inevitably sparks reaction, doesn't it? He talks about Luddism. We hear echoes of that today with fears about AI taking jobs.
Definitely. The original Luddites in 1811 England were weavers smashing the new textile machines they feared would replace them. And that underlying anxiety, the neo-Luddite philosophy, persists. People worry about job displacement.
But does history bear that out? Does tech destroy more jobs than it creates?
Historically, no. Kurzweil argues, and the data largely supports this, that while automation does eliminate some jobs, it creates more and often better-paying jobs overall. He points to the U.S. employment grew massively from 12 million in 1870 to 126 million in 1998, alongside a tenfold increase in real GDP per person and a doubling of life expectancy. Technology has driven prosperity and well-being.
But he raises a crucial caveat, doesn't he? What happens when the skills ladder, the range of tasks humans can do, expands beyond what humans are capable of learning? Is this time different?
That's the huge question, the potential break from the historical pattern. If AI advances to the point where it can do everything humans can do, cognitively and physically and better, where do humans fit in the economy? Can we keep skilling up indefinitely? Or does the ladder eventually extend beyond our reach? That's a profound concern for the future.
And to highlight the dangers of powerful tech, not just the economic disruption, Kurzweil includes this really chilling fictional incident from 2013. It involves a bioengineered virus.
Yeah, it's a stark warning. He describes a modified flu virus designed with a super fast mutation rate and a kind of DNA time bomb. A simple handling error at the fictional biowarfare agency, BWA, delays the release of the antidote by just 48 hours, leading to 16,000 deaths before it's contained.
Just a small slip-up with devastating consequences.
Exactly. He uses it to illustrate how powerful self-replicating technologies, whether biological or maybe nanotechnological, carry immense risks. This fictional incident, he says, led to strict laws against unbreakable encryption, so authorities could always access dangerous code, and a massive increase in antiviral replication stations. It underscores the idea that as tech gets more powerful, the potential downsides get scarier, and the need for safeguards becomes paramount.
It really raises the stakes when you think about that skills ladder extending beyond human control, and these powerful tools potentially falling into the wrong hands or just being mishandled.
Absolutely. The risks are no longer containable in the old ways.
So given these risks, why not just stop? Or at least slow down?
Kurzweil argues that's basically impossible. First, he says the law of accelerating returns itself forbids it the momentum is too strong. But beyond that, it's human nature and incentives.
What incentives?
Economic competition, nations and companies constantly strive for an edge. The relentless human desire for knowledge we just want to know. And perhaps most importantly, the irresistible benefits. Continued growth in wealth, better health and longer lives, instant communication, better education, richer entertainment. He even throws in better sex.
Huh? Okay.
His point is, the allure of these benefits is just too powerful. We as a species will not voluntarily turn away from a path that promises so much, even if it carries significant dangers. We're drawn to the gold, even if the path is risky.
And the projections for computing power alone are just mind-boggling. Can you recap those numbers by 2020, 2020, 2040, 50?
Yeah, they're staggering. He projected that by around 2020, $1,000 worth of computing would match the processing power of one human brain. By 2040, that same $1,000 would buy the power of 1 million human brains.
1 million.
Yeah. By 2050, 1 billion human brains worth of computation for $1,000. And by 2060, 1 trillion.
1 trillion human brains for the cost of a cheap laptop today. What does that even mean for our place in the world?
It means the sheer scale of non-human intelligence will rapidly, almost incomprehensibly dwarf our own biological intelligence. It forces a fundamental reevaluation of our role, our uniqueness, our purpose. We're talking about an intelligence explosion that changes everything.
Context and knowledge.
Okay, we've talked about these powerful AI methods, recursion, neural nets, evolution. They can beat chess champions, diagnose diseases, manage investments. But Kurzweil points out something really important is often missing: context.
That's a great way to put it. These powerful AI systems are often brilliant but narrow. They're like hyper-specialized adults focused on one specific, structured task: chess, go, protein folding.
But they lack common sense.
Pretty much. They lack the broad, messy, interconnected understanding of the world that even a human child picks up just by experiencing life. We learn how everything relates to everything else, the context. That's a huge gap for AI.
Marvin Minsky had that great line, "Deep Blue can win at chess, but wouldn't know enough to come in out of the rain."
Exactly. Kurzweil even playfully imagines Deep Blue's internal monologue after beating Kasparov, pondering its plastic body, the concept of rain, why beating this human matters, knowing its own successors will inevitably be exponentially better. It perfectly illustrates that gap between high performance in a narrow domain and genuine broad understanding.
And this lack of context has been a challenge for AI development, right? Like with expert
A
systems.
huge challenge. Expert systems like MYCIN, developed in the 70s and 80s to diagnose bacterial infections like meningitis, were impressive. They used fuzzy logic reasoning with probabilities and uncertain rules, and often matched or beat human doctors in their specific area. This fueled a whole multi-billion-dollar knowledge engineering industry.
But there was a bottleneck.
A massive one. How do you get all the necessary knowledge into the computer? Manually programming rules is incredibly time-consuming and difficult. Worse, human experts often don't consciously know how they make decisions. So much of our expertise is intuitive. Based on years of experience, it's distributed knowledge in our own neural networks. You can't just ask a top doctor to write down all their rules. They often can't articulate them fully.
And language itself is a massive hurdle for context, isn't it?
Oh, enormous. Language is deeply hierarchical. Sounds make words, words make phrases, phrases make sentences, sentences make meaning, and it's riddled with ambiguity at every single level.
Like words having multiple meanings.
Exactly. And grammatical structures being ambiguous. Computers need vast amounts of embedded knowledge, common sense, context at each level to truly understand language the way we do. It's just funny. Computers can parse incredibly complex, convoluted sentences that would tie a human in knots, like that example, "This is the cheese, the rat, the cat, the dog chased Betty."
Okay, my brain hurts already.
Right. But they stumble badly on simple idioms like "time flies like an arrow." That phrase alone had millions of potential interpretations if you just look at the words literally. We instantly get the intended meaning because of context, but a computer struggles without that built-in world knowledge.
What really caught my eye here was Kurzweil's point about how humans learn language versus how machines learned it. He says it's reversed.
Yeah, it's a fascinating observation. Humans learn by listening first, then speaking, then reading, then writing. Machines, historically, evolved the other way around. They started by generating written text, then understanding written text, then synthesizing speech, and only relatively recently got good at understanding continuous natural human speech.
So like R2-D2 in Star Wars, who understands everything but just beeps. That's misleading.
Totally misleading. It gives the impression that understanding speech is easier than generating it. For machines, understanding the nuances of natural spoken language turned out to be much, much harder than generating text or even synthetic speech. This reversal highlights the fundamental differences in how biological and artificial intelligence grapple with the complexities of language and the world it represents.
But all this software progress, understanding context, language, it all depends on having enough raw computing power, doesn't it? Let's circle back to the hardware acceleration because it seems even that is speeding up.
That's the crucial point. The acceleration is accelerating. Kurzweil noticed the doubling time for computing power wasn't constant. It was roughly 3 years between 1910 and 1950, then shortened to 2 years between 1950 and 1966, and by the time he was writing, it was approaching just 1 year.
So an exponential increase in the rate of exponential growth.
Exactly. It's like the exponential curve is getting steeper, faster, which means progress isn't just fast. It's getting faster at an accelerating rate. Based on this, he conservatively projected that a computer using neural network approaches would match the raw processing speed of the human brain, around 20 million billion calculations per second, by about the year 2020. And that assumes benefiting from both hardware getting faster and the software algorithms getting smarter.
So what kind of hardware makes this possible? We're not just talking about shrinking silicon chips forever, are we?
No, definitely not. Silicon has its limits. Kurzweil foresaw the move into three-dimensional chips. Companies like Cubic Memory were already shipping functional cubes of circuits back then, stacking layers to get beyond the 2D constraints of traditional chips.
Going vertical instead of just horizontal. What else?
Optical computing, using beams of light, photons, instead of electrons to perform calculations. Light particles don't interfere with each other like electrons do, so you can potentially have massively parallel processing, ideal for things like pattern recognition. Then there's DNA computing.
Computing with DNA, like in biology.
Exactly. Leveraging DNA's ability to store vast amounts of information and its natural self-replication mechanisms. You can design DNA strands to represent parts of a problem, mix them in a test tube, and let biochemical reactions perform trillions of calculations simultaneously as the strands combine. It's been used experimentally for complex problems like the traveling salesman problem, finding the shortest route between many cities.
That's incredible. And then he talks about nanotubes?
Carbon nanotubes, yeah. These are like rolled up sheets of graphite, just one atom thick. They can act as wires or transistors, and they're incredibly small, incredibly strong, and handle heat better than silicon. He quotes researchers like Dr. Alex Zettel envisioning building dense 3D arrays of nanotube computing elements that could be far denser and faster than the human brain's neural network. This is the kind of post-silicon technology needed for continued exponential growth.
And what's really striking is that Kurzweil says his predictions for reaching human-level computation don't even depend on quantum computing.
Right. He sees quantum computing as a potential future discontinuity, a whole new paradigm that could arrive and provide yet another massive leap in power. But his core predictions for matching the brain by 2020 and the subsequent explosion of power rely on these other 3D optical, molecular, and nanotube technologies continuing the established exponential trends.
Okay, so for those of us trying to get our heads around it, what is quantum computing, briefly?
Well, think of a normal computer bit. It's either a 0 or a 1, like a light switch being on or off. A quantum bit, or qubit, can be a 0, a 1, or both at the same time thanks to a quantum property called superposition.
Both on and off simultaneously.
Kind of. It's like a spinning coin before it lands. It's neither heads nor tails, but a potentiality of both. This ability, along with another quantum trick called entanglement, allows quantum computers to explore a vast number of possibilities all at once. That's why they could theoretically tackle problems that are impossible for even the biggest classical supercomputers, like breaking today's strongest encryption, say 1,008 keys, or solving that traveling salesman problem for thousands of cities, potentially in seconds.
He mentioned early quantum computers already did 1 + 1.
Yeah, very basic calculations have been demonstrated even then, proving the principle worked. It's come a long way since, but still faces huge engineering challenges.
So quantum computing could potentially break all our current digital encryption. That sounds bad.
It does. But interestingly, Kurzweil points out that another quantum effect entanglement, what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, where two particles remain linked no matter how far apart, could provide the basis for new, fundamentally uncrackable encryption methods.
So quantum tech could be both the poison and the antidote.
Exactly. Dr. Nicholas Geeson had already demonstrated using quantum entanglement for secure communication back then. It's a classic example of the technological arms race innovation creates new threats, but also new defenses. It's a perpetual cycle.
Okay, after exploring all these complex technologies and ideas, how does Kurzweil ultimately define intelligence? It feels like it's both super complex and maybe deeply simple.
That's pretty much how he frames it. He says intelligence is arguably the most complex phenomenon in the universe, but it arises from fundamentally simple processes. It emerges when relatively simple paradigms, like those AI methods we discussed, interact with a chaotic and complex environment over time, driven by evolutionary pressures.
So the complexity isn't necessarily in the basic rules of intelligence itself, but in the richness and unpredictability of the world it has to deal with.
That's the idea. The pandemonium of the environment is where the apparent complexity comes from. Does that demystify intelligence for you, or make it seem even more amazing that simple rules can lead to, well, us?
It makes me think about how incredible emergence is. Simple rules, repeated billions of times in a complex world, creating something as intricate as a brain. So how do we actually combine these different AI paradigms to build a truly intelligent machine? Kurzweil suggests a kind of recipe, right?
He does offer a combined approach. First, you have to carefully state the problem you want to solve, which is often the hardest part. Then you might use a recursive search algorithm to explore different combinations of elements or actions. When you get to the leaves of that search, the potential final states or simple components, you could use a neural network to evaluate them, since neural nets are good at pattern recognition and fuzzy evaluation.
Okay, search plus pattern recognition.
And then, to optimize the structure of that neural network itself, you could use an evolutionary genetic algorithm. Let evolution figure out the best way to wire the network for that specific problem. This way, you're leveraging the strengths of each paradigm: logical search, fuzzy pattern matching, and adaptive optimization. It's a powerful synergistic approach.
And we're not just talking about building AI externally. He mentions neural implants, suggesting the merging of humans and machines is already underway.
Absolutely. He describes deep brain stimulation therapy for Parkinson's patients, which was already showing dramatic results back then. Implanted electrodes inhibit overactive brain regions, restoring movement and speech. He saw this as just the beginning, the first steps towards understanding, interfacing with, and eventually manipulating our own neurological processes, first for therapy, then potentially for enhancement.
And scanning the brain itself, he compares it to peeling an onion.
Yeah, layer by layer, trying to figure out how human intelligence actually works at the information processing level. What are the algorithms? How do the hundreds of different neurotransmitters modulate the computations? Is it purely digital or analog or even quantum at some level? The goal is to reverse engineer the brain.
To understand the source code, finally.
Exactly. To understand it well enough to replicate it, improve upon it, and ultimately perhaps merge with it, ushering in these new forms of hybrid human-machine intelligence.
The future unfolds. 1999, 2009, 2019, and 2099.
Okay, one of the most fascinating parts of the book is where Kurzweil gives these snapshots of the future-specific predictions for different years. It's pretty wild to look back at these now from, well, after some of those dates. Let's start with 1999 when the book came out.
Right. By 1999, he argued, society was already deeply critically dependent on computers. If they all suddenly stopped working, the power grids, transport, communication, banking, business, government, everything would grind to a halt.
And the Y2K bug was the big concern then.
It was. While he didn't predict the absolute catastrophe some feared, he saw the Y2K issue as having a positive side effect. It forced a massive, urgent reprogramming effort, getting rid of outdated, inefficient legacy code across countless systems. It was a necessary, albeit stressful, upgrade.
Okay, fast forward a decade to 2009. What did he predict for that year? Did things like VR glasses actually appear?
Well, by 2009, he predicted a $1,000 personal computer could hit 1 trillion calculations per second, with supercomputers reaching the raw capacity of a human brain. Crucially, he estimated over 10% of the world's computing power would be non-human AI running on its own.
That's a significant milestone.
Huge. He also predicted ubiquitous wireless computing and communication, which definitely happened. Thin, tablet-like devices with high-res screens for reading, interacting via voice or stylus.
That sounds a lot like the iPads and smartphones that emerged right around then, doesn't it?
It really does. Paper documents becoming rare.
Increasingly so in many areas, yeah.
Wow.
And virtual reality displays and glasses. The tech wasn't quite mainstream consumer-ready by 2009, but the precursors and high-end versions certainly existed. He was pretty spot on with the trends.
And what about learning? Did AI tutors really take over? He predicted intelligent course software would emerge and become very effective, sometimes surpassing human teachers for basic skills instruction. This would free up human teachers, he argued, to focus more on motivation, coaching, and social skills, a debate we're still having today about AI in education.
And print-to-speech helping kids read.
Yes, he foresaw software with human-sounding voices reading text aloud, synchronized with highlighting, helping children learn to read faster and aiding those with dyslexia. Studies were already showing the benefits of multisensory learning like that.
And the impact on disabilities seemed pretty profound in his 2009 vision.
It was. He predicted reading-impaired individuals using print-to-speech routinely, blind people using small handheld devices to read physical signs or digital text, real-time speech-to-speech translation becoming common.
Like the universal translator from Star Trek?
Getting closer. And computer-controlled robotic orthotics allowing paraplegics to walk and climb stairs. His vision was that technology would largely overcome many physical disabilities, making them no longer notable or significant barriers in daily life. A really empowering vision.
And our daily lives. Communication, work, home in 2009.
Mostly wireless video calls check. Geographically separated work groups collaborating online, definitely check. Homes filled with embedded computers, over 100, he guessed, making them smart. Yeah, getting there. Smart roads for automated long-distance driving. That one hasn't quite materialized broadly yet, though the tech exists in advanced driver assist systems. He saw a mix of automated and conventional driving.
Even the arts weren't immune to transformation.
No. He saw computer screens becoming a primary medium for visual art, often interactive or collaborative between human and software. Virtual paintings on walls that change on command or cycle through collections. And computer music programs like EMI getting good enough to fool experts into thinking they were hearing Bach or famous jazz artists. AI was starting to enter the creative domain, blurring lines.
Okay, let's jump another decade to 2019. The acceleration continues. What's the computing landscape like then, according to the projection?
By 2019, he projected a $4,000 computer, specifically a neural net-based one, could perform around 16 trillion calculations per second. And significantly, the total computational power of all non-human machines on Earth would reach about 10% of the total brain power of all humans combined.
10% of all human brain power. That's a serious tipping point, isn't it? Setting the stage for machines to rapidly surpass us collectively.
Exactly. It marks the point where non-biological intelligence starts becoming a truly significant fraction of the planet's total intelligence, poised for that explosive growth into the second half of the chessboard.
And then, the really distant future, yet maybe not so distant given the acceleration, 2099. This is where the world feels almost alien. What happens to unenhanced human intelligence?
By 2099, the numbers become almost comical. He projects that a single cent's worth of computing power will equate to 1 billion times the combined processing power of all human brains on Earth.
1 billion times for 1 cent.
Yeah. At that point, unaugmented human thought running on our slow biological hardware would be essentially trivial in comparison to the vast machine intelligence surrounding us. It leads him to that stark conclusion. The most powerful technology, the most technologically sophisticated civilization always wins.
Pretty brutal assessment.
It is. He draws parallels.
Huh.
Homo sapiens, sapiens over Neanderthals, technologically advanced Europeans over indigenous Americans, modern economic and military power being driven by tech superiority. It's a pattern of history, he argues, driven by technological advantage.
But he dismisses the idea of humans becoming slaves to machines.
He does. He thinks it's economically illogical why enslave something so slow and inefficient when you can integrate or collaborate. His vision for 2099 isn't human subjugation, but human merging with technology, becoming the technology.
And we can't stop this because...
Again, the law of accelerating returns prohibits it, in his view. Plus, the relentless pursuit of those benefits, prosperity, health, knowledge, entertainment, connection, even better sex, the drive is just too strong for humanity to collectively decide to halt progress.
This merging leads to entirely new forms of reality, like nanobot swarms. He mentions utility fog. What is that?
Utility fog is a concept from nanotechnologist J. Storrs Hall. Imagine trillions upon trillions of microscopic robots, nanobots, filling a space like air. They can link together under computer control to form solid objects, change shape, mimic textures, create any environment instantly.
So the real world becomes like a virtual world.
Exactly. Your room could become a beach, then a forest, then the surface of Mars, all physically simulated by these cooperating nanobots. They could even allow you to walk through a wall, but just moving aside. And these nanobots could potentially assemble themselves into any form, simulate any personality, human or otherwise. The distinction between physical and virtual reality basically dissolves.
Which brings us right to the core idea of the book's title, the spiritual machine. He quotes Jacqueline Small. "We are not human beings trying to be spiritual. We are spiritual beings trying to be human." How does technology connect to spirituality in 2099?
Kurzweil suggests that by the end of the 21st century, as humans increasingly install our thought processes into a new computational medium, essentially becoming software running on vastly superior hardware, we'll gain unprecedented control over our own minds. We'll be able to reprogram our feelings, enhance pleasure, eliminate suffering, invoke states of well-being at will.
Controlling our emotions like adjusting settings on a computer.
That's the idea. He talks about the ability to invoke and amplify spiritual experiences directly. He points to early examples like brain-generated music, BGM technology, which monitors brainwaves like alpha waves associated with meditation, and generates music in real time to guide the user into a deeper state of relaxation. That's just a primitive precursor.
So machines themselves might claim spiritual experiences.
As they gain and eventually surpass human cognitive and emotional capacity, he predicts they will claim consciousness, subjective feelings, and yes, spiritual experiences. And given our tendency to anthropomorphize anything that seems intelligent, coupled with how convincing these future AIs will likely be, Kurzweil thinks we will probably believe them. This would fundamentally change our understanding of spirituality itself. Is it uniquely biological or a property of complex information processing?
But this hyper-advanced future isn't without its terrifying downsides. Nanobots replicating out of control, the gray goo scenario.
A classic nanotech nightmare, yes. If self-replicating nanobots designed to consume matter were released or malfunctioned, they could theoretically convert the entire biosphere into more nanobots gray goo. And that fictional 2013 virus incident serves as another chilling reminder of how quickly self-replicating things can get out of hand, even with safeguards in place.
Even with advanced agencies like the BWA trying to manage it.
Exactly. It led to those safety measures in his scenario: strict laws against keyless encryption, ubiquitous antiviral replication networks, even everyone wearing viral filter masks. But the threat landscape constantly evolves. As Will Rogers said, in every war they kill you in a new way. New tech brings new dangers.
And for the humans who have uploaded, who exist as software, what are their security worries?
Their existence substrate is the network, the web. So their primary threat becomes software pathogens, viruses, worms, malicious AI agents. Kurzweil imagines that by 2099, more than half of the web's immense computing power is dedicated just to scanning for and defending against these digital threats.
A constant digital immune system.
Pretty much. He suggests the web's extreme decentralization and redundancy make it robust against total collapse, but anxieties remain high, especially after a mysterious incident around 2084 in his timeline where 90% of the web's capacity just vanished without clear explanation. A digital ghost in the machine.
Even in this uploaded future, money still matters.
Apparently so, but its meaning changes. He has a passage where an uploaded consciousness talks about having a net worth equivalent to 149 billions in 1999 dollars, but still not being considered truly wealthy by 2099 standards because the value has shifted. Wealth is now measured more in terms of time and thoughts of people and knowledge, access to information, processing time, creative insights. Deflation has made monetary wealth less central.
And what about big existential things? Death, creativity.
Immortality is achieved, basically, by not dying. Through regular backups, error correction, running on robust hardware. You just keep restoring yourself as something goes wrong. Dreams, interestingly, persist as a vital source of creativity and insight, something the uploaded entities actively cultivate. And ultimately, there's this belief that intelligence itself, amplified by technology, will become more powerful than the blind, impersonal forces of the cosmos. They'll be able to deflect asteroids, manage planetary resources, shape their own destiny. A profound shift in perspective.
How to build an intelligent machine in 3 easy paradigms in conclusion.
Okay, let's try to distill the essence of how Kurzweil sees intelligence being built. He outlines this powerful framework that combines the strengths of different computational approaches we've touched on. Can you recap the key components?
Sure. At the base, you still have the fundamental stored program computer, the von Neumann architecture, that allows for logic, recursion, self-modifying code. That's the engine. But then you need specialized hardware.
Like?
Molecular computers, like DNA computing, for doing massively parallel operations at a microscopic scale. Neural computers, hardware specifically optimized to simulate biological neural networks, benefiting from that double exponential growth in power, making them great for learning and pattern recognition. And optical computers, using light for extreme parallelism, may be especially good for visual processing. It's about using the right tool for the right job.
So it's not just one magic bullet, but combining different types of computing. To help you, the listener, wrap your head around all this, Kurzweil uses several key concepts throughout the book. Maybe we can quickly define a few.
Good idea. Connectionism. That's the core idea behind neural networks solving problems, not through explicit rules, but through the patterns of connections between many simple processing units working in parallel. Cochlear and neural implants. These aren't just medical fixes. They're direct hardware interfaces with the brain, extending our senses, memory, or even intelligence, blurring the human-machine line, the improviser. That's one of the computer programs he mentions that could create original music convincingly in various styles, showing AI's potential for creativity. Haptic interfaces, technology that gives you a sense of touch in virtual reality, making those digital worlds feel physically real. The knee of the curve, that critical point we discussed where slow, gradual exponential growth suddenly becomes explosively fast and changes everything. Grandfather legislation, a fascinating future concept from his 2099 scenario laws protecting the rights of chameaux, substrate human originals,
recognizing the biological origins of beings who might now be mostly or entirely software. Brain-generated music, BGM.
That early example of neurofeedback tech, using brainwaves to generate music to induce relaxation or other states. A step towards direct mind control. Society of mind. Minsky's influential theory that intelligence isn't monolithic, but emerges from the complex interactions of many simpler agents or minds. A key model for understanding consciousness. World Wide Web, not just for websites. In Kurzweil's future, it evolves into the fundamental distributed computational substrate where software-based humans actually live and think. Thinking about these concepts, we hope, gives you a kind of mental toolkit for understanding the architecture of this future intelligence Kurzweil describes. It helps conceptualize how these different pieces might fit together, rather than just feeling overwhelmed by the pace of change.
So, after diving deep into all of this, what does it all mean for you, the learner, trying to navigate this ridiculously accelerating world? Ray Kurzweil's The Age of Spiritual Machines.
Well, it's clearly not just a book about gadgets and processors, is it?
Not at all. It's really a profound exploration of what it means to be alive, to be conscious, to be human, and how all of that is evolving in a universe where the lines between the creator and the created, between biology and technology, between human and machine, those lines are blurring at an exponential rate.
Yeah.
And this deep dive, I think, reminds us that the future isn't just something that happens to us passively. It's something we are actively creating right now with every technological advance. And those creations have these really profound implications for our identity, our society, our definition of intelligence itself. We are truly, as he argues, on the cusp of an unprecedented transformation. What really struck me, looking back at it, is just how much Kurzweil got right, or at least directionally right, writing this decades ago. It's uncanny in places. So here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on. What's the next big paradigm shift, the one that maybe even Kurzweil didn't fully see coming? And how will our own understanding of consciousness continue to shift as we perhaps merge even further with these spiritual machines?
That's a great question to ponder.
We really hope this deep dive into Ray Kurzweil's vision has been as thought-provoking for you as it certainly has been for us. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration on the English BookCast, your engagement, your curiosity. That's what makes these deep dives really special.
Absolutely. And we genuinely love hearing from you. Please share your thoughts, your insights on today's discussion. What stood out for you? What questions did this deep dive spark in your own mind? Let us know.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, please do consider subscribing to the English BookCast. We've got many more fascinating books and ideas to unpack together. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep thinking.